There we go. All right, so we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, and our speaker is joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. We know that school is wrapping up for all you guys. You can take a big summer break after all this madness teaching from home, but we so appreciate you tuning in both live and on YouTube over the last few months as we have run over 300 broadcasts with amazing scientists and explorers from around the world. So over the last few weeks, we have been diving in headlong with Environment and Climate Change Canada and all the various groups that sort of comprise them in highlighting some really, really cool stories. But this one is particularly close to my heart because it is about the Arctic. So this is Canada's biggest wilderness. This is one of the most amazing places in the world. And we are joined live for the first time ever in Nunavut, in Iqaluit, its capital, by Haley Roberts. So she is going to highlight all the work of a species at risk biologist up there in one of the, again, great wildernesses in the world. I'm super excited to have her. I don't want to steal her thunder, so without further ado, thank you so much for joining us today, Haley, and take us away.
Hi guys, this is very exciting. I'm going to share my screen and then we can get started. Oh no, it's already gone awry. That's all right, we can fix it.
You're just on slide 2.
All right, we're good. Okay, so thanks everyone for tuning in. I am pretty excited to talk to you all today. I have to admit, this is my first time doing a sort of digital presentation to school groups. I have done them live, and I have to say this is a little harder. It's nice to see the school groups and see if people are paying attention, and both with adult and kid groups, seeing if people are falling asleep. But now I get a view of my kitchen table, so that's fun. But yeah, so today I am going to touch on my life here, including what I do for work and why it's important, as well as sort of like what I do for when I'm not working, and kind of life up here and why it's so awesome. This is only 20 minutes, so it's going to be very high level. If you have any topics that come up that you're like, I want to know more about this, talk to your teacher, talk to your parents, talk to your siblings, Google, and everything that you could possibly know is available. So hopefully this will just pique your interest. I know there's a lot of stuff happening these days, and so hopefully stuff in the world, hopefully this 20 minutes and 20 minutes of questions can take your mind off things maybe for a little bit, or switch your train of thought. All right, so let's get going. How did I get here? So lots of school. Sorry for those kids out there who don't like school. It's part of it. I did my undergrad at Bishop's University in biology. And then I did my master's at Queen's University with ecology and conservation, mostly working with frogs, actually. Then I worked for a few years doing some short-term contracts in Ontario, working for the government of Ontario, working for Bird Studies Canada, great organization. And I always love to travel. So I've traveled quite a few places, and I always saw the Arctic as this bucket list item. I was like, maybe one day I'll get to go on one of those cruises, or maybe I'll know someone up there and I can go visit. And then I did some more research and realized there's jobs up here, and there's lots of jobs. So I applied and got a job. And then a few months later, I moved here. But it's kind of an ideal place for me. I've always loved the winter. I'm a winter baby. Someone tuning in said it's like in the 90s and humid, and that's too hot. That's too hot for me. It's like 5 degrees, I think, here right now in Iqaluit. On June 19th, we had snow like a week or so ago. Yeah, it's winter a lot here. And I've always loved animals and conservation. I was inspired by Steve Irwin at a young age. If kids haven't heard of him, yeah, Jesse's excited. Please get your parents to help you YouTube him. He was amazing, and he got me into conservation. Something fun to note, I'm not sure, hopefully you guys can see my little pointer. These are what the trees look like in Nunavut. They don't go up, they go to the side. So this is actually one of the largest trees I've seen in Nunavut. It's quite big, which is pretty unique. Yeah, so Nunavut. It's unique for a lot of reasons, but the first one I'm going to talk about is it is part, or it's uh, part of a modern treaty, a modern land claim. So treaties have been happening for a long time. They're historical as well as modern in nature. They're agreements, at least in Canada, between the government of Canada and an Indigenous group, and generally the territories and provinces as well. So the Inuit of Nunavut decided to work together with the government of Canada to look forward in a positive way, and created this modern land claim, the Nunavut Land Claim Agreement. And it was signed by the Inuit of Nunavut, represented by NTI, or Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, the government of Northwest Territories, because that's what Nunavut used to be before it became Nunavut, as well as the government of Canada. So there's lots of different parts. Obviously, this is a huge document. So if you're really interested about it, please look it up. But there's 2 points I'm going to highlight are, one, they wanted the creation of Nunavut to be part of it. So that it worked, it was part of it. So Nunavut became Canada's newest territory in 1999. Additionally, they wanted to have control over their wildlife management. Wildlife is very important to Inuit and Inuit culture. So they created the Nunavut Wildlife Management Board, which is their main wildlife managing body, and whom we work with for almost every step of the way. Other fun facts about Nunavut: as you can see, it's huge. 1/5 of Canada. It spans 3 time zones. Other fun facts: unique peoples. So I already mentioned them. Inuit. Very, very interesting culture. They have a very unique language. So Inuktitut, which represents many different dialects, and a unique alphabet as well. So they have the Roman alphabet, which is what we'd all be used to, as well as syllabics, which are these symbols you can see here. And I like learning the symbols because it makes me feel like I'm writing in code and like I'm on National Treasure or something. It's really neat. Each symbol generally represents a combination of a consonant and a vowel, which makes for some really fun creations of words. And then there's finals, which are like ending consonants as well. So it's fun to try that out, try to write words in syllabics. There's unique food. So it's called country food, and it's what Inuit have been eating forever. And it's awesome, and it's tasty, and they share it willingly. And so I'm sorry in advance if I butcher these words, but I've been trying. So there's taktu, which is caribou, which is like that big piece in the middle there. And yes, we're eating it raw. There's matak, which is beluga, and it's very chewy. It's like the beluga skin fat. So yeah, my friend's she wrote it to me what it was, and I've now forgotten. There's pitsi, which is dried Arctic char, which is any sort of dried fish you'd have at home, or like if salmon, lots of people have salmon. It's very similar to that. You can smoke it, you can dry it, you can candy it, which is so good. And finally, another thing is a unique day and night cycle. So where I am in Iqaluit in the summer, which is right now, the longest days of summer is coming up, it's about 20 hours of daylight-ish. And in the winter, 20 hours of darkness. And more north of here, it's 24 hours of darkness in the winter and 24 hours of sunlight in the summer, which is pretty interesting. Okay, so I've already given you one of the answers, so yay. So what is my day-to-day at work? So my job is to conserve species at risk in the Arctic using the Species at Risk Act. So conserving species has become even more important than ever, especially in the Arctic, because of climate change. I mean, we all know this. And so the reason it's a big concern is because for those species that are already at low numbers, so if they're already considered at risk and they're at a low number, we're not sure what effects climate change will have in the short term or the long term. So in some cases, maybe it's beneficial. Maybe, plants are growing earlier and there's more resources. But in a lot of cases, it's looking to be not very good. I mean, they're losing their habitat, or maybe the earlier plant growth doesn't line up with when they would usually eat it. So there's a bit of a synchronicity loss with that. So it's important to keep on top of things like that, to keep monitoring populations, to keep being aware of what species could be affected by this. And especially in the Arctic, it's a few. So what species does this include? Rather than do like a question and answer, I was thinking that all the kids, and maybe the adults, if they feel like, could write down any Arctic species you can think of that that you think might be at risk up here. I've given you one, so you're welcome. So maybe take like 30 seconds and do that, and I'll just give you a sec.
If anyone wants to do that on YouTube as well, so the YouTube chat bar, any of our classes that are joining in from across Ontario and beyond, you can just let me know in that chat bar, and in the next 30 seconds, if any come out, I'll highlight them. So polar bears, our first one written down. Thought that might come, but any others, keep them right coming, guys. It's awesome. All right. See, you got us quizzed, Haley. Good job.
Yeah, sorry. I should have mentioned there'd be a quiz.
The math one comes later. Arctic seal we've got written in, so that's really good. And if anyone wants to type in the chat bar on Zoom too, just let me know. We'll come. Whale, so a bunch of answers coming in. Fantastic, Haley.
That's awesome. Okay, you guys are on the ball. I probably should have prefaced that the Canadian Wildlife Service deals only with terrestrial animals. We do know of Arctic of aquatic animals, because it's good to know about everything. But the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is in charge of dealing with species at risk in the water. But you are correct, there are some whales that are at risk. And I think seal is up for a potential listing as well. So you're on the right track. There's dolphin and Union caribou. Don't know if any of you got that one. That's a species that's found kind of Northwest Territories and Nunavut, well, like midway through Nunavut. And they cross back and forth to an island twice a year, which is pretty unique. Polar bear, good job, whoever guessed that one. That's definitely a hot topic species up here. We've got Peary caribou, a different kind of caribou. Now these guys are in the high Arctic. Like you saw how a large chunk of Nunavut's like really, really north. That's where these guys are. Grizzly bear, which some people might not have thought of. They're a species of special concern around Canada. And although the population seems to be expanding into Nunavut, it's decreasing in the south. And we look at creatures, species as a whole for all of Canada, not just in territory or in province. As well as birds, like we're not just on the mammal train. So the Ross's gull is as another example, and we also have ducks that are on the list, and that. All right, so what is a species at risk? So these are plants and animals that are at risk of disappearing from the wild in Canada. We focus on Canadian species here. And so there's like a wide range that they could be at. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're all listed for you guys to read through. It starts with special concern. Now these are species, they're not doing great. They're not doing horrible. They're, they should be looked at. They should be managed. They could become worse, which is the biggest fear. So it's good to start keeping track and be managing. Then you go through threatened and endangered, they're getting worse and worse. And then extirpated means they're actually no longer in Canada, but they could be other places in the world, like the United States, for example. And extinct means they're no longer anywhere. So our goal is to stop species from getting worse. Ideally, bringing them down the list is awesome, but just stopping it from getting worse is a great thing to accomplish as well. So I've made it it's kind of like a cycle, how it works. And I'm not going to go into lots of detail, but this just gives you a general overview of the steps. So we have the assessment first. This is done by the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada. It's a bit of a mouthful. COSWIC, completely independent. A bunch of scientists and specialists get together and they decide which species should maybe be listed, or maybe a change of listing if they've been on it for a while. And then it comes to us, and it's up to us to talk to people. Like that's one of my primary job description titles is to go and talk with people, figure out, what they want, what are their opinions on this listing potential, what effects could it have on them and what they do. And this includes a lot of people, which I'll get into shortly. The next step after that, if the species is listed, is recovery planning. So for those special concern species, we start managing them with a management plan. And then for those more at-risk species, we have recovery strategies and action plans. And these are actually things we're going to do. These are concrete actions, like a list. These are what we're going to do, and this will help the species. And we also protect them. We protect their habitat, called critical habitat. And it's what's vital for what they do, like how they live. So in your case, it's probably your house, maybe your property. It's critical. You need that house. You need that shelter. There's food in that house. There's water in that house. So it protects that. We implement what's in these what's in these documents and protect, like I said. And then there's reevaluations. Nothing stays stagnant. Everything changes, right? We even have some species that are up for downlisting, which is awesome. It means they're no longer on the list. We did a good job. Yay. So reevaluation happens as well. Okay, like I said, we work together. So that's what a lot of this is about, is we've got really important partners. The goal of the Species at Risk Act is not to take control. It's to assist. So it's to assist the provinces and the territories to take care of species that they're already doing. They're already doing a good job. So it's our job to help. The government of Nunavut, in this case, does a great job. Like, we're just trying to help them. We've got the regional wildlife boards. They're kind of run under NWMB. Inuit organizations, of course, all kind of run under NTI, which that's one of the signatories of the land claim, if you recall, as well as communities in the general public, including hunters and trappers organizations. There's one in every community, pretty much, I think, and they know, like, they're the ones on the ground with these species. They know a lot of information. And so we go and consult with them and we have a conversation. We talk about, what's going on with us, what we know about the species. They tell us what they know about the species and their opinion, like, what do they want? We have coffee and we have treats. It's meant to be a talk, a conversation, kind of sort of what we're doing now, except it's mostly me talking. So this means we get to travel, which is kind of awesome, because Nunavut is huge. So it's hard to get to everywhere. So to get to Grise Fjord, the most northerly community in Canada, we took this little propellered plane that I'm not sure if you can see very clearly. It's freezing inside. You have to be full bundled. There's no bathrooms or anything. Your luggage sits between your knees. It's great. You also get to see, like, this is a giant army plane. The army was in town doing some Arctic training, so they let me see their plane, which was cool. And then this is this huge mountain, and as you fly into Grise Fjord, you're flying straight at it. And then you take a left-hander right at the end, right when you think this is how it ends. This is where I go. No, you turn and you're fine. But you can't, as you can expect, you can't travel up there when there's any sort of wind to affect this incoming plane. So there's lots of delays with Arctic travel, but you just, I have an e-reader, Kobo book, so I just download a bunch of books and I'm set. What else? Okay, so day to day for fun. Obviously, work is fun, so I should mention and preface that. But it's important to have hobbies up here. We don't have shopping malls. We do have a cinema, but it's been under construction for about a year now. But they're going to put really nice seats in, so that's exciting, because watching like Endgame 3-hour movie with really not very comfortable seating, it's painful. It's a painful experience. So we're glad that they're getting renovated. Internet is expensive. Like, we do have it, but it's relatively new-ish. So it's not cheap and it's not unlimited. So I can't just watch Netflix all the time. So we have things like cross-country skiing and snowmobiling and dog sledding in the winter, which is awesome. Highly recommend. We got hiking and fishing and camping in the summer. So if you're outdoorsy, it's great. Unfortunately, there's no road trips because we really don't have any road. Like we have road in the community. So if you really want to, you can just drive in circles. But it's a fly, like everything in Nunavut is fly in only, or ship in. Like you can get sea lifts and things can get brought up to you by boat. But other than that, you have to fly in. That's the only option. So sometimes I do miss road trips. But there's things like, okay, I mean, I do puzzles, you read, video games, making friends. So Nunavut as a whole is relatively transient. They lots of people come and do short-term contracts and then leave. And so I found that it's made people very friendly and very welcoming and very open. And so making friends up here was relatively easy, like easier even than being in a city in the South, like in Kingston, Ontario. So that's been really nice to find people like that. And yeah, so it's been great. I just, as we were going through this, I realized I forgot some important facts about a different slide. And I'm like, maybe I should go back to that slide. What do you think, Jesse? Do we have time to do that?
You have time to go back to slide. Go for it.
Okay, so I forgot to say something really interesting about some statistics. Okay, so with regards to Inuit, like just to give you a context of like who lives here and who doesn't, there's 65,000 Inuit in Canada as of the 2016 census. 3/4 of them live in Inuit Nunangat, which includes Nunavut, Nunavik, which is northern Quebec, Inuvialuit, which is like northern Northwest Territories, Yukon, and Nunatsiavut, which is like northern Newfoundland, Labrador. In Nunavut itself, of a population of around 39,000, approximately 30,000 are Inuit. So it's predominantly an Inuit territory. As well, that means there's only 39,000 people for a territory that's 1/5 the size of Canada. So just mull that over for a sec, and I'll go to the last slide. Of course, things don't have to go perfect, right? Okay, so Nunavut Sunsets, because who doesn't love sunsets? This is Frobisher Bay, right at the beginning of a sunset. This is actually Resolute, another northern community. And this is the sun setting, but can a sun set if it doesn't rise? Dilemma, I'm not sure. It looks like a sunset, but the sun hadn't risen that day, so maybe not. This is from the edge of town where I live in Iqaluit. And this is from the back of my friend's house. So you see a sea lift here. This is how stuff gets up on boat, and just gorgeous, gorgeous sunset. And this was out on the water, skidooing or snowmobiling out on the lake, on the bay. And I had both the sunset and the moonrise, which I thought was neat. Yeah, so Kwanamik, that's thanks and Inuktitut. And does anyone have any questions?
Well, before we dive into the questions, Haley, I just want to say thank you so much for a fantastic presentation, and especially for our first time ever doing a digital ed presentation. You rock. That was great. We've got 75 plus people all across Ontario, Connecticut, Alberta, just all over the place today with us, which is really exciting. So thank you so much for joining live and on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, let me know where you're joining from, and I will share questions with Haley. Haley, if you want to come out of screen share so we can have a bit of a conversation, that would be awesome. Oh, and those links. So keep those up for a second before you come out of screen share. So people that are on YouTube can check these out. These are some amazing links. Haley, you can pass them to me as well, and we'll share them all with the live teachers that are with us. So that would be fantastic. Very cool.
And can people see the northern lights in this photo? I can never know. I never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no. Yeah, so that's from my balcony, which is fun.
Oh. Awesome. Oh, we got
the best photo, but it's lit. So
listen, anytime people get a chance to see the northern lights, it's a spectacular experience, and we've covered this in a few other broadcasts as well. It's a really unique and amazing thing. All right, okay. Let me go first to Ms. Erickson's class, joining us in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. Ms. Erickson, if you want to kick us off with a question from your class, go for it.
Okay, Susanna, you can unmute your mic.
What was your favorite animal that you saw?
Oh, that I saw. I wish I'd seen them all, to be honest. Unfortunately, because they're at risk, they're not easy to find. I haven't actually seen any of the animals that I've put on that screen, which anytime there's a polar bear sighting, which is very rare actually in Iqaluit, I'm like, I get in the car and I drive there, which you're not supposed to do, but I really want to see one. I'm trying to think. I've seen some birds up here, but I haven't seen anything at risk that's on the list. Sorry. I know.
Okay.
I'd really like to see caribou. Some of my coworkers have, and it would be awesome.
That's what I was going to ask next, is if there's something that you're really keen on. I like that you shared your illicit polar bear drives on YouTube. Way to go. No one's watching.
Nobody is watching, right?
Great first question, Ms. Erickson. All right, I'm going to go to Miss Amato joining us in Calgary, Alberta. Miss Amato, if you want to come on up. And I just unmuted you after you unmuted yourself. There you go. You're ready to go.
This is on behalf of my students. What can we do in Alberta or wherever we're coming from to help the animals, to help preserve them?
Good question. Good question. Well, I think everyone can just do their small part when it comes to helping the planet. I think it's good to do things, like use less plastic waste. Like if you can use like reusable lunch bags or like go shopping with reusable bags, even though I know right now with COVID times, they're not suggesting to do that as much, but using a reusable water bottle, things like that are really good. Just, trying to keep, stuff like that. I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah. I think it's the best thing is to just try and do little things that you can do. It's not, I don't think it's anyone changing the world, but those are really big things you can do individually. You could go to restaurants and bring like Tupperware containers with you to take food out, and bring like reusable cutlery with you if you feel like it when restaurants open again, obviously. But yeah, so I think it's starting with stuff like that, like, being aware of that. You can also look up like your carbon footprint and what that means online. That's sort of along the same things. And start a conversation with like your family and that, and see.
This is something that we cover in so many of our conservation programs. It's so much of the action that you can take to help species, to help prevent climate change, to help mitigate that effect, are really simple things. I mean, as you mentioned, Haley, take reusable things, walk or bike when you don't need to take a car. I mean, there's so many options out there, depending on where you are in the world, of course, that really, really help make a big difference. In fact, National Geographic, who we've partnered with a lot over the last years, they have tons of great resources on Planet Earth plastic, things you can do with that. Oceanwise is a partner of ours in Vancouver. So some really great insights on those programs as well. So great question, Ms. Amato. All right, I'm going to go to Ms. Hewitt joining us in Burlington, Ontario. Ms. Hewitt, if you have a question for us, go for it.
I do. I've got a couple questions from my kids who are sharing along with us now. First thing, I'm supposed to tell you, Haley, that they like your Doctor Strange poster in the background there.
Yes, someone noticed. Woo!
And then secondly, they're wondering about what actual, like some examples of some actual action that maybe you or your colleagues take to stop endangerment or species, to actually help species at risk. So other than kind of talking to people, what types of things do you do?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, good question. So something we do is we help write those recovery documents that I was talking about. So like, for example, right now I'm involved with the grizzly bear management plan. So within that, we're including things to help manage the species itself. Then there's recovery documents that are created that include, specific actions. Well, the action plan includes specific actions towards recovery. And so then we, as in like the government of Canada, will fund not only our research to do this research, but, say the government of Nunavut to do some, caribou surveys, and we'll give them the funds to do that through different means. And it's complicated. I'm not going to go into how we give them money, but we provide money in that respect as well. So not just writing up the documents that outline what we can do and what on the ground can be done, the population surveys, monitoring, things like that, that we can help other organizations do, or some do ourselves. Yeah.
just a quick follow-up on monitoring and surveys, just because they're terms that might not be familiar to some of our students. So you're
Oh, yeah.
going out and you're just assessing and understanding how big the population is of various animals and where they are. Is that correct?
Well, it's not me, but but yeah, for example, if we fund the government of Nunavut to do a caribou survey, their either caribou biologist or their regional biologist will go up. Usually, it's in a helicopter for caribou surveys because they're over such a wide range. You can't just hike around and find them. So they look from a helicopter, a few different methods. Sometimes it's like, flying in lines back and forth. And I think sometimes it's like focusing on unknown locations. But yeah, it's essentially like you going into your yard and taking a plot of grass and counting all the spiders in that plot of grass. And then the next day plotting how many spiders are there the next day. And then you can see how many spiders are maybe in your backyard by, over the summer or year to year. Like you could break it down really small if you felt like it. But these are big animals and they're wide ranges. So we have to do it a little bigger.
I have to stress that if I knew nothing else about you other than that you reference Steve Irwin, National Treasure, and your mind goes to, highlighting the spiders in your backyard, I'd love you already. This is great.
This is what I did as a kid. I don't know about what other people do.
No, and this is something, so Miss Erickson's class is involved with this, but we've been doing backyard bio stuff recently, like getting kids to go out and check all the wildlife near them and assess it. And literally, you can go in your backyard right now, Calgary, Burlington, Connecticut, whatever, and you can find, so I found 72 species.
Even a coward.
See, there's so much out there. Get out. In fact, when you're done this broadcast, just get out there and check some stuff out. Santino in Miss Ricardo's class. So Santino Haley is like the most questioning kid we've ever had on YouTube ever. I think he's asked 250 questions over the last month and a half. So his first question is, what is the coldest weather you've recorded up there in the Arctic? You can take that as like a general thing, or you personally, how cold does it get where you are?
That's a good question. Yeah. Okay. So me personally, I've been in I think it was minus 55 with the wind chill. And so this was, the elementary schools were closed, but it wasn't cold enough for the high schools to close. So they still went to school, but the elementary kids didn't. And it's like I wore goggles and like full bundle, as I call it, which is multiple layers. You've got like your hoodie up and then the layers of scarves and buffs, and then your actual hood, maybe another scarf, multiple layers. But like in the northern communities, like in Grise Fjord, I was there in January and it wasn't actually that cold, which was nice, but like they'll get into the 60s for sure, which I've yet to deal with and don't know if I want to.
Since we have American kids too, I love that there's minus 40, which is both temperature scales meet up. No, don't worry about Fahrenheit. I'm saying. So
okay, good. I'm like, what is that in
at 40 they meet up, and then like it goes the other way. So when you're at minus 55, it's some of the coldest temperatures ever recorded on Earth are in Nunavut. So I love that the high schools stay open. That's got to be the worst feeling. Like you're in grade 10, you're like, yes, day off, air is freezing, you throw water up, it just turns into ice crystals, and they're like, no, you got to come. Yeah. We're spoiled here in Toronto. Awesome. All right, let me go back to Miss Erickson's class. We'll do another round of questions with our live groups and go from there.
We are all set with questions, but thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, if you have any more, let me know in the chat bar. And what I'll do is go to Miss Amato next then. If you have one for us, come on up.
Yeah, quick question. How do you cope with the darkness in the winter?
Nice.
Good question. Good practical question. Hobbies. Also lots of light. Like I've bought lots of lamps and things like that. You try and structure your day so that when it is light outside, like around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're outside. It's weird. And you feel like, oh, it must be nighttime. It must be dinner time and it must be sleep time. It's 3 in the afternoon. But yeah, you just you keep yourself busy for the most part. And you do nighttime stuff. Like you have bonfires and that, which are interesting doing it in the summer because you don't have darkness really, but it's just as fun in the winter. Also Northern Lights, which are stunning, and they're definitely a helpful thing to get through the winter. But yeah, mostly I would just like, I spent a lot of time reading and making puzzles by like candlelight and and lamplight, and hanging out with my friends and stuff. Like having people over for board games, and that helps a lot as well.
Well, you highlighted that there's a real social aspect to being in Nunavut. I mean, again, 39,000 people in the whole territory. I mean, in my neighborhood alone, like in my neck of the woods of Toronto, there's 115,000 people. We've got groups joining from Mississauga, Connecticut, and more. So if there's such a low population and there's so much transience, you have that sort of great personal connection, which is nice. I have to ask a question I've never asked in the history of this program, and that is, what is the largest puzzle you've ever created?
Oh, 1,000-piece.
That,
1,000
okay.
pieces is what I go for. But the puzzle that was in my presentation, it's not actually finished. I worked on it for about 7 months, and then I put it on like one of those puzzle things that you roll up. They're handy. And now it's in my closet. It had really weird pieces that didn't make any sense. I admitted short-term defeat on that puzzle.
I will have to do a follow-up broadcast just to find out when you finish that. So just let us know. All right, I'm going to take a couple of YouTube questions and then go back to Miss Hewitt. So in Vancouver, we've got the Pitatelli family, and they want to know, can you speak Inuktitut? Can you speak these languages or elements of them, and have you learned those over the years you've been there?
This is a good question. You guys are good at questions. I decided when I came here I came here last April. So I've only been here just over a year and 3 months. And I thought it would be really beneficial to like learn the language as much as possible. So especially when I go to communities and talk with people, I can, converse with them at least a little bit in their preferred language. It's hard. It's a hard language to learn. I'm very good at the syllabics. So I can pretty much translate the symbols back into Roman. What the word means is a little trickier. The way the words are laid out here is like you have the main subject first and then the descriptors afterwards. So you can have a very long word that's like trying to say that the dog is like pink and yellow and big, and it's like dog, pink, yellow, big. So it's difficult. So like I can say, like, for example, most time zones right now, I'd say ulakut, which is good morning. Konamik, which is what I said at the end, is thank you in some dialects. Yeah, so it's yeah, I could try and butcher some more for you. But I am trying. I am learning. I am with some help. Some of my coworkers are helping me with that, which is awesome.
All right, I'm going to take. Well, we got a few more minutes. Quick question from a group joining in Winnipeg. Do people often see animals walking around in the Arctic? When you go out in the street, are there things just walking down the street that are unusual compared to us in the southern parts of Canada?
There used to be. From all recollections, like 15 years ago, maybe, you'd have caribou walking in the streets. And in people's backyards, just like that picture I showed you with the sea lift can and the sunset, there'd be caribou. That's called Road to Nowhere. Fun name for road. It literally does go nowhere. And there's caribou. There would have been caribou, and you find the bones still. But because they're at such low numbers in some places, they're definitely not seen as much. You'll see like Arctic hare, and potentially foxes. I've only ever seen fox prints, Arctic fox prints. Ptarmigan are out now, and that. Not that I've seen them, but I'd like to. But again, they're not wandering through town. Like you have to kind of go out onto the land a bit. The only things really in town, especially through the winter, are ravens. We have lots of ravens. And then in the summer, we get a lot of different other birds like snow buntings and stuff, which are a little cuter. I mean, ravens are really smart, but they're large and they're
Are you afraid
loud.
of ravens, Haley?
Afraid of them? When you hear them attacking dogs and cats in like large numbers, it's they're intense.
Now I'm afraid of ravens. Perfect.
Don't be afraid. Don't be
afraid. They're lovely. They're fantastic. Let's do one last question for Miss Hewitt. Again, if you want to wrap us up, go for it.
Okay, so I've got a question from my daughter who's listening, who wants to know how much snow are you getting in Nunavut like year round? So winter, let's say peak amounts, and summer
Yeah.
is there snow that stays?
That's a good question. Yeah, so in terms of actual amount, I wouldn't be able to give you a number, but in terms of like longevity, we usually get snowfall in October, November. It was late this year, actually, like this past winter. It wasn't until about mid to late November that we had steady snow. But yeah, and then it'll stay on the ground. Like even right now in the tundra, I'd show you outside, but then you'd see my apartment, which yeah, you don't need to see it. Which there's still some snow on the ground in the tundra, but it melted in town ahead of schedule this year again, same as last year. But yeah, I'd say from like October, November till about May, there's snow.
Yep.
And like the bay is still frozen right now. Like our first sea lift won't come in for a few weeks still. But yeah, in terms of amount, we're actually in a bit of a desert situation. So we don't get as much precipitation as you would say in like Ottawa in Ontario. You know, we rarely get rain, and we get snow and it just sticks rather than those. So you don't usually see those huge snowfalls that you do in say Southern Ontario of like a few feet in a few days and then it's all gone into slushy grossness. But yeah, so I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, so that's why I know. But yeah, that was a good question.
Nice. Haley, this has been so much fun. Not only have you highlighted your role as a biologist and some of the cool work you get to do and you know, wowed kids with Dr. Strange posters in the background, but it's really nice getting to understand and hear from your perspective, a part of Canada that most Canadians might never get a chance to see. So this has been really, really special, and I really appreciate it. Haley, what we do at the end of every broadcast is I'm going to demute the microphones of all our teachers. So Ms. Erickson, Ms. Amato, Ms. Hewitt, if you want to join me in saying a big thank you to Haley for joining us today. You should all be demuted, and go for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Haley, do send me those links so I can get them to our teachers so people can learn more and follow up and keep the learning going. For everyone on YouTube, you can check those out. And again, it's such a thrill getting to highlight the amazing work of Environment and Climate Change Canada. You guys are so keen on your jobs. We've yet to run into a Government of Canada scientist like, oh God, this is terrible. It's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks everyone for listening.
All right, bye for now, guys. See y'all